Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter says the power utility is expecting Unit 4 of the Kusile power station to be synchronized to the grid by January and ready for commercial operation by June next year. The announcement was made during Eskom's 2021 interim results report today. Now, that report has seen Eskom post a 9.2 billion half-year profit, but it's at the backdrop, or comes with the backdrop, of a forecast loss by the end of the financial year. That's in early 2022. Emissions and environmental friendliness were also part of the issues that came up in this report. Let's get you more detail, then bring in Kopano Gumbi. Kopano, let's begin first with the financial health of Eskom.
Absolutely, Tembegile. It's quite impressive. For the first time, Eskom registering a profit, 9.2 billion rand. That's the first time they've seen an interim profit, at least in the last 4 years. The chief financial officer telling us that the last time they saw such profits was in 2017. So it demonstrates that the company is really doing everything it can to get its financial books in order, get its financial house in order, and get back on track so that it eventually gets to a point where it relies less and less on government in order to operationalize. Now, this is still a long way off, as they mentioned, alluding to the fact that in the full year, they expect to see a profit or loss of 9 billion rand in total, which is an improvement on the last year. In the last few years, we've seen double digits, around 20 billion rand losses in full year performance from Eskom. So that they're going to improve their financial losses is a positive sign. All other indicators across their financial board, at least for this first half of the year, have also done very, very well, which is encouraging. It means that they're managing their finances the way that they should. The only concern is the cost of coal and the amount of coal that they're getting. So the primary costs, the input costs to generate electricity, remain high still. However, that is also trying to be managed in the future, Tembegile.
And what is the one issue we all want to know, right, as South Africans, is what is the outlook for load shedding in the short and long term?
Well, at least over the holiday period, Andre de Ruyter telling us that they do not anticipate having any load shedding from tomorrow. They expect that the demand for power is going to be reduced, so there shouldn't be a need for load shedding. But of course, we understand that the system and Eskom's overall generating capacity remains constrained. Their power units are still under or need severe or serious maintenance, and as well as that, the amount of power that can be generated continues to be constrained in this regard. So we do anticipate that load shedding will continue for a significant amount of time. It's anticipated anywhere between 3 and 5 years that we should anticipate having load shedding across the country, and that's just because the power stations are old. The ability for Eskom to get new power onto the grid remains slightly constrained. We've seen with all the different bid rounds that have come through that the IPPs are only now starting to generate the kind of electricity that can be added onto the grid, but it's nowhere near what is needed in the short and immediate term. So right now, where we have the independent power producers able to produce around 2,000 megawatts, Eskom telling us that they need between 4 and 6 just to reduce 1 or 2 stages of load shedding. So there's still a long way to go, but the plans are being put in place, and execution is starting to show that they've really done what needs to be done in terms of some of the groundwork for Eskom to try and get us out of this situation.
The concerning news, at least for Eskom this week, because it was celebrated by environmentalists, is the Environmental Affairs Department denying the entity permission and exemption, essentially, as far as the pollution limits that it has to adhere to in power generation. There had been word that that could perhaps compromise the ability to generate electricity. Any update on that specifically today?
Yes, in fact, Andre de Ruyter was quite extensively explained that the Department of Public Enterprises, as well as the Department of Forestry and Environment, they're all aware of the situation and the implications of it. And Eskom have filed an objection to the most latest ruling, and for now at least that should give them a stay of the implementation from the Department of Forestry Environment, trying to minimize the amount of emissions that Eskom is bringing from 2 of their major power stations. But what we know is that for now at least, though that there will be no load shedding, they will not be shutting down any of those plants in the short term as they continue discussions with the various departments and try to come to some kind of understanding around the emissions as well as how they plan to deal with that going forward.
Kopano Gumbi, thank you very much for that. We'll come back to you in the next hour for more on this story tonight. Eskom reporting on a 6-month profile of its records so far. Let's talk